Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the premiere of Vantage Point on ITV. I'm your host Mohammed Choonara. Thank you for joining us. We'll give you an overview of the main stories from around the country and the world. Remember, you can interact with us on Twitter using the hashtag ITV Vantage Point. The past week has been a whirlwind in South African politics once again, and thanks to the State of the Nation address, we had our dose of comedy, violence, and even some education from Parliament. This week also saw US President Donald Trump requesting a phone call to President Zuma, an Israeli pedophile being sentenced, and we also had the wonderful news of Sheikh Bassiouni returning home after his ordeal in Egypt, and the Rohingya crisis continues. Our top story for the past week is undoubtedly the State of the Nation address, amid the fanfare, the ceremonial acts, and threats of military presence at Parliament. Unfortunately, once again, the President's speech was disrupted and violence erupted in the Houses of Parliament. The EFF made all sorts of accusations against the President, and the Speaker of the House was unable to control proceedings.
Thank you. And the Deputy
Read together with the Constitution
Honorable President
of the NCOP.
Honorable President, please take your seat.
Sitting in front of us here, it's a man who
Are you
is
on a point of
incorrigible.
order?
An incorrigible man, rotten to the core. And that has been found by the Constitutional Court. Member of Parliament. And we need you as our head. Mr. Zuma has collapsed his own right to address us here.
Can you allow
Mr.
us to rule
President,
on the matter?
441 soldiers will never protect you.
Unfortunate scenes played out outside Parliament, where there were scuffles between EFF and ANC supporters. In the parliamentary precinct, armed riot police patrolled and created a barricade. Opposition parties were unhappy and have since gone to court to ensure military personnel are not allowed in Parliament anymore. Moving on now, the SONA debate took place on Tuesday and Wednesday in Parliament, where opposition parties were able to debate what the President said. The Speaker of the House once again reiterated the importance of respecting the decorum of the House, and the DA did manage to get their moment of silence for the 94 people who lost their lives in the Isidimeni saga.
I will now ask the honourable members to please rise to observe a moment of silence in memory of the late fellow South Africans. Thank you. Please be seated. I would only wish to emphasize the point that insults and similar language do not serve to enhance the dignity of Parliament. This conduct sets a bad example to the nation. Honourable members, we are leaders, and it is expected of us to behave as such.
Streets were closed off and barricaded for miles around this precinct. There were riot police and razor wire on every corner. There were snipers on the rooftop. There were soldiers with automatic rifles pacing up and down Parliament's Avenue. This, fellow South Africans, wasn't the state of the nation. It was a state against the nation.
It may be fitting to us to remember the words of Tatu Tambo, addressing the 7th Congress of the SACP, the party in April 1989. He may as well have given us the marching order henceforth when he told us, I open quote, There can be no doubt, however, that correctly channeled and directed by us, these pressures, precisely because of their immensity, can bring our victory nearer.
As we enter the 23rd year of our democracy, we see a rise in the levels of anxiety and anger among South Africans, with anarchy knocking at our door. Notwithstanding these trends, the United Democratic Movement acknowledges the great strides South Africa has made since 1994. The most disturbing reality is that we see an increase in the politics of patronage, uncontrollable corruption, the collapse of government institutions, a high unemployment rate, lack of development, failing health and education systems, widening inequality, chronic poverty, and ineffective provincial governments.
Last Thursday, Speaker Baleka Mbete refused to hold a moment of silence for the 94 South Africans who died in her government's care. She acted like a small-minded and partisan person in a callous tone that was more befitting of a jailer rather than a speaker. I saw dismayed Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa trying to catch her eye. I watched him carefully, beseeching her to rethink. But she lacked the empathy and she lacked the insight to realize that this was a moment to seize the moral high ground. Her undemocratic and unsympathetic ways were on show for the country to see. And they highlighted that she simply doesn't get democracy. Honourable members, Ombudsman Makgoba fingered Gauteng MEC Mashlangu and senior officials in the Gauteng province. I have seen a letter written by WITS occupational therapy students sent in January 2016 to Premier David Makura, as well as to national health officials warning of the looming peril in those institutions. The DA has therefore asked Health Minister Motsoaledi to investigate why his national officials did not act. To her great credit, the DG for the department, Precious Matsoso, regretted that she did not have the urgency of judgment to get a court order to compel Gauteng Health to do the right thing. But what I ask you, honourable members, of the highly respected DDG for Hospitals, Dr. Terence Carter, who also must have known. And what of the minister himself? These senior officials diligently report to him. He should tell the House, he is presently having a press briefing in Pretoria, he should tell the House whether he did indeed know what was happening. He did a very good thing in having the Ombudsman investigate, but then I'm afraid it was too late. 94 human beings had already died. There can be no other conclusion than this national government lacks the judgment and it lacks the ability to intervene in matters of life and death when confronted with watertight information.
During the SONA broadcast, we managed to chat to many politicians, and one thing I felt needed to be asked is if the ANC sometimes unfairly criticized for the lack of service delivery. If one looks back at the past 22 years of democracy, some of the ruling party's achievements have been phenomenal, especially with regards to housing, electricity, etc. I spoke to ANC Chief Bob Jackson in Tembu at Parliament and asked him if the ANC are judged too harshly.
Yes, as the African National Congress, we have done everything we have to do for our people and together with our people. Whether you talk of building houses, whether you talk of building schools, whether you talk of building hospitals, clinics, and making education accessible. In fact, many of our schools, primary and secondary schools, as you will know, are no-fee schools. We have also started ensuring that even higher education is also free, particularly to those who are poor and those whose parents our teachers, and the nurses, etc., etc. So indeed, there's a lot that we have done, but we have also maintained peace in this country. You know, we are not like other countries where every day the government is taken over by marauding gangs with guns. So we have the peace. We have also assisted in peacekeeping in the continent. But indeed, we ourselves, we have been very critical of how far we have performed when it comes to giving land back to our people. You can do all these things, but when your people whose land was taken away are still landless, you can then not be proud of what you have achieved. When your people are still not owning the economy of the country and the productive assets of the country, we ourselves are saying, no, 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 we can't be proud.
That was really interesting thoughts from Jackson Mtembu. It's time for a break. Stay tuned. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Vantage Point. Before the break, we discussed the SONA. Moving on now, this week also saw the EFF hosting a press conference at their Johannesburg headquarters. Leader Julius Malema was in top form, making a host of allegations against all and sundry. One of the more entertaining allegations was that Malema and the EFF are convinced they were going to be injected with a chemical weapon by parliamentary security personnel. Malema also played into the ANC succession debate and predicted a landslide victory for Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma.
And you say, do you have any evidence that this person was coming to kill you? What more evidence do you want? You think when a person beats you up, he gives you life? He's feeding you life? I mean, that question doesn't arise. That's evidence enough. Hired to beat us to death. Her colleagues had to stop her. You know the cable tie we got? The SG took it from the protection services. They had a package of cable ties. And as they were talking outside, just outside the speaker's door, the door that the speaker uses to exit the assembly, the SG then pulled one of those cable ties and ran into the assembly. And they couldn't do anything because now he has entered the assembly, and they can only enter the assembly through the invitation. That those guys have got injections and cable ties to use against EFF members. So by exposing them, then you expose the plan, and then they retreat from the plan. The injection is not going to happen like when you go and inject flu in the open, like we are now injecting you. As they push, I was on the floor. They pushed me down, and then 4 or 5 of them came on top of me. So as that happens, that's when you get injected. And as a result, we've now instructed that all members of Parliament of the EFF must go for blood tests. Because how the Secret Service works is that you cannot be injected and then you even know that you're injected. So because we were warned, we even got subsequent to that and advised that we must go and do blood test, all of us, so that we are sure that none of us is actually injected with those biological weapons.
Explosive stuff from Malema, Parliament being accused of waging a biological war against MPs. Pull the other one now. Our next story is a sickening story of a vile human being. Convicted paedophile Watertoach Knoop was on Monday sentenced to 32 life sentences and a further 170 years for more than 800 crimes that included child rape, exploitation, sexual assault and child pornography. The East Rand car salesman was sentenced at the Johannesburg High Court. Judge Kasim Musa said the accused had pleaded guilty to rape, which is a serious offense with a minimum sentence of life imprisonment. He said there was increasing pressure on the court to give harsher sentences to individuals who are convicted of rape. Judge Musa said a strong message needed to be sent to like-minded individuals that South African courts will not condemn such actions. Knoop was ordered to take part in anger management and sexual offender classes to assist with his rehabilitation. President Jacob Zuma received an important call from US President Donald Trump this week. The transcript hasn't been made public as yet, but social media was abuzz with what could have been said. Take a look. Moving further afield now, the Rohingya crisis continues. Tens of thousands of Muslims from the Rakhine state are seeking refuge in Bangladesh. Humanitarian aid from Malaysia has arrived, but the situation is dire. Young men and women are hoping for an education and for some kind of normality in their lives.
বাংলাদেশ একটা সড়ো বাংলাদেশের মধ্যে এখন 17 কোটি পর্যন্ত মানুষের বসবাস সড়োদের সম্মধ্যে আরায়ও তারার বাংলাদেশ সরকার বাংলাদেশের ফিরে ওরা আরা যখন আছে তারাল্লাই বুঝো গিয়ে গই ইয়ান আল্লাহ বলে আরা দেশত যখন ফিরে যাই না পারির ইয়ান আল্লাহ বলে আরারে আন্তর্জাতিক এই বা এই থার্ড কান্ট্রি রিসেটল করি পাল্লাই বলে আর কারণ সুযোগ দিবাল্লা বলে বাংলাদেশ সরকারের বিনতভাবে রোহিঙ্গার পক্ষ অনুরোধ করে
বেশিরভাগ দিনের মাঝে গরিবত্ব মাঝে ফজরত্ব মাঝে নুমাসিত যেত যায় আর দুজন হুয়া রাতি মাঝে মেহেরি হুসালত দে তোমার হরজত দে আয় হইদে আর হইদে নুমাসিত যাই দে নুমাসিত যেত যায় এনে আর গুলি মাঝে গুলি যেত মাঝে আর ফোঁয়া যেই বাট্যাং মাঝে গুলি ফুজে আয় দৌড়ি দেয় আগে গই যেত দেয় আগে গই আয় ফজর শুক্রবার দিন ফজরত্ব ভিন্নে আয় হুয়াশা লইজরে আর ফ্যামিলি শো বাংলাদেশের দেয় আগে গই
Truly heartbreaking scenes playing out in Bangladesh. How sad that the world is so quiet with regards to the plight of the Rohingya Muslims. This week also saw the release of Sheikh Abdussalam Basyouni from his ordeal in Egypt. The humanitarian worker returned to South Africa earlier this week. Sheikh Basyouni was arrested at Cairo airport more than 2 years ago. The Sheikh was never charged, and alhamdulillah he's back in the country and has vowed to carry on the sterling humanitarian work he is so well known for.
جزاك الله خيرا الحمد لله بدك شكر الله سبحانه وتعالى ويريف South Africa now and at my home with all the brothers alhamdulillah with me now in my house بدك شكر الله سبحانه وتعالى he save us and bring us again to our beautiful country and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy and I make dua for all the brothers and sisters and everyone who support me and everyone who remember me with his dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of them and keep this country safe and free and peace. Allahumma ameen.
And finally this week, we end with a tech story that is sure to excite many of our viewers. It's a return of the Nokia 3310 cell phone. The most resilient and reliable phone ever made is making a comeback. 17 years after it was originally launched, the Nokia 3310 will reportedly relaunch at the Mobile World Congress later this month. According to reports in the media, the phone will initially be available only to European and North American consumers. It's still possible to buy the 3310 on Amazon, though only through its marketplace and not directly from Nokia. The phone will have features such as the clock, calculator, the ability to store up to 10 reminders and 4 games, Snake 2, Pairs 2, Space Impact and Bantumi. And that's where we come to the end of the first episode of Vantage Point. We hope you enjoyed it. Should you wish to contact us, drop us an email at vantagepoint@itvnetworks.tv or interact with us on Twitter or Facebook. From all of us in the team, until we meet again, fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.